Welcome to NMP Talk Show, the show that keeps you informed and engaged with topics about your mental health, wellness. And today, like any other day, we do have special guests for you so that they can come through and they're professionals in their fields, respective fields. They answering questions that you might have and are looking for answers. Now, today we're talking about insomnia. And a lot of us, we struggle from that. You know, you toss and turn from your bedside and end up walking, making some coffee, making it worse. So we want to find out what we can do to overcome insomnia if you are struggling with it. Or perhaps somebody in your household is struggling with it. Please invite them to come and listen up so that they can enjoy the show as well. And to do this for us, we do have a guest all the way from the UK, west of London, Berkshire. That's what you say, hey? Berkshire. And her name is Tracy Hannigan. Tracy, welcome to NMP Talk Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for honoring our show, and we so much looking forward to, a good discussion with you. Now, as we continue with our show, we just want to find out who actually is Tracy. Can you tell us who Tracy is?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
I think I'm a lot of things, but in this capacity, I'm a qualified sleep therapist, and I work exclusively with adults who have insomnia, whether it's falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up early. My personal history, my personal interest in insomnia developed as a result of my own insomnia. My first bout back in my early 20s, managed to get through that, finding out later how I did it. I wasn't sure how I got through it at the time. And a second bout in my 30s, in which I engaged in the kinds of concepts around sleep therapy that I later trained in. And now use with my own clients. So I've got both a personal interest and a professional interest in this topic. And I feel like I could talk about sleep all day long.
Yeah. You know, what amazes me is a lot of my guests, whatever topic that we talk about, is they either have suffered from it or they're going through, the challenge about the topic that we're talking in head. So that's what I'm saying. It's so amazing that you have so much power over a topic or a disease if you've gone through it and know what to do. You're a better advisor to some of us that are struggling to find their feet on how to deal with the issue. So thank you. Should I say thank you that you've gone through that?
Actually, I think that as miserable as insomnia is, going through the process of recovering from insomnia actually teaches us that we are stronger than we think, just like any adversity in life. So there is a silver lining that can be found if you look at it through a certain lens.
No, that's good. I mean, silver lining, that's what we need. And on our side here in South Africa, the time now is 5:05 in the afternoon, and it's about to rain. So I just can imagine people who are traveling from work to home, and it's all cloudy, possibly raining where they are driving, and there's traffic all the way. But you have something to look forward to, your home, the solace of your home. So with diseases, I think that's how we have to look at it, right? That there is a silver lining out there. Whatever you're going through, there will always be a silver lining. Is that how you look at it as well?
Absolutely. I am very, I guess you would say, mortality motivated.
Yeah.
I think that if we are lucky enough to be here in this time and place, we have to find ways to make the most of it, even if we are uncomfortable, even if we are facing challenges.
Yeah. No, that's true. Right. So what is insomnia?
There's a little bit of an interesting thing about insomnia. Insomnia is classified technically as a sleep disorder, but really insomnia is a manifestation of the fear of not sleeping. It shows itself as having difficulty falling asleep, having difficulty staying asleep. So it's normal to wake up a couple of times in the middle of the night and then to fall back to sleep. We're talking about waking up in the middle of the night and being awake for hours in this case, or waking up early. So having a really, really early start to the day. So 4 o'clock wake up, when your preferred wake up time would be more like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. The thing that is interesting about insomnia is that insomnia can be both acute and long-standing. And acute insomnia is a completely normal response to things that happen in our life. You know, we might have something really exciting happening, something really distressing happening. It's normal to not sleep well when we feel under threat. The thing that's different with longer standing insomnia is that the event is in the past, but the sleeplessness continues. And that's because the threat has become the sleeplessness itself. So it creates a little bit of a vicious circle.
So you're saying it's a circle that creates, what fascinates me, or not necessarily fascinates me, but another way of looking at it that you just explained to me that is different to what I knew about insomnia. You're saying it's fear of falling asleep.
Fear of not sleeping.
Of not sleeping. Okay.
Of not sleeping.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So if we have an event that gets in the way of our sleep, two things happen. We're not sleeping because of the event that's going on, like a bereavement, for example.
Okay.
And then as we move forward in life, we start saying things like, oh my goodness, I'm not sleeping. I have to fix this. This is really bad. This is really sharp. Well, that is considered a threat to our brain. And we will continue not sleeping very well as long as we feel under threat. We never would have evolved if we could sleep while we were under threat. We would have been eaten by lions, tigers, and bears, and we wouldn't have evolved. It's a safety mechanism to keep us alive. The problem is that it gets triggered by something that's not worthy of being triggered. Okay. So that's how it keeps itself. It's called perpetuation. The sleeplessness becomes perpetuated by the fear of the sleeplessness itself.
Okay. Also anxiety can cause that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's an anxiety or almost a phobia of not sleeping that keeps the cycle going. Okay.
Now you're talking about maybe you have a project or you have something that you need to take care of and you're not able to sleep because you're thinking about it. So who actually gets affected by insomnia? Who tends to be, affected by it?
People with pre-existing mental health conditions, particularly anxiety. That's a very, very, very common one. So people who have anxiety are more likely to respond to not sleeping well or to life situations in general in a more amplified way that disturbs sleep. Perimenopausal and menopausal women, because of hormonal changes, that can certainly impact people's sleep in an ongoing way. So waking up from a hot flush is one thing, but then having an amplified response to that being awake creates additional problems. And what's interesting is you're talking about a project, for example. Perfectionists tend to suffer from insomnia more than people who are not perfectionists, because the perfectionism is generally, well, this is my view of it, is a way to try to control things so that they happen in a very specific way. And it's a safety behavior because if it happens another way, it's anxiety provoking. And so people who need things to be a very certain way are going to have a hard time if they think that sleep needs to look a very certain way. And it will just make them anxious, which of course will then get in the way of them sleeping better. The people who have perfectionism as a personality trait, who have an anxiety disorder, they are more likely to respond to life's natural changes in sleep in a way that gets in the way of their sleep. And that anxiety around not sleeping then causes different issues with sleep as well. So not only does the arousal get in the way directly, it causes us to do things that make sleep worse. Common sense would say, if you're not sleeping well, go to bed early, for example, or take a nap or sleep in late. That's fine for people who don't have insomnia. For the occasional time when people are having a rough patch of sleep, But this time in bed extension, as it's called, actually really damages sleep, because sleep is like a pizza. This is the analogy that I like to use. If you have a 10-inch pizza stone and you only have a 4-inch blob, 4 inches worth blob of pizza dough, and you try to roll a pizza out onto that bigger stone, it's going to get thin and holy. And that's exactly what happens with sleep. So responding to sleeplessness by spending lots more time in bed, just in case you might get a little extra sleep, is actually the wrong path to take.
So do you think you need to have a set time that you sleep? Not just sleeping because you have to sleep. For instance, if you say you sleep at 10 in the evening so that you wake up maybe 5, 6 in the morning, and that should be your cycle or your time period of sleeping. If you mess that up, it also messes with your sleeping pattern.
The thing that will interrupt somebody's overall sleeping pattern more, if somebody's sleeping just fine, for example, quote unquote, normally, the thing that will interfere with their sleep the most is an irregular waking up time, an irregular time to start the day. The going to sleep time, people should really think about. We have this biological and psychological relationship with our bed that is unconscious. Before we have sleeping difficulty, it's bed, sleep, bed, sleep, bed, sleep.
Yeah.
And when we lay around in bed a lot, anxious and worried and upset about not sleeping, spending a lot of time awake, it becomes more of a, should I lay here and worry? Maybe this is where I do all my worrying. This is where I plan my projects, etc. We want to wait until we're very sleepy to actually go up to bed. So that way that sleepy feeling is strongly paired with the bed. This is why picking, particularly with people who have sleeping difficulties already, picking a time to go to bed is sometimes a problem. For example, if you pick 10 o'clock because you've been told 10 o'clock, but you take 2 hours to fall asleep, you're going to just lay there for 2 hours, and that's going to be harmful for your sleep in the long run. It's more important for people who have sleeping difficulties to wake up at the same time of day, regardless of how much they've slept. That's the general rule of thumb. It's not medical advice, of course. But what happens is that allows us to anchor our circadian rhythm and our whole sleep clock to the same time of day. And it allows us to build up sleep drive and sleep pressure consistently. So if one night you have less sleep, that sleep drive rolls over into subsequent days. And if you get more sleep that night, great. The idea is that we want to even sleep out a little bit so that people have more confidence in their ability to, for example, fall asleep, so that they aren't so afraid of not sleeping.
So what about those that read in bed? Read. They'll have a book. They read in bed before they sleep. Yeah. How does it affect?
If you read on the internet, there are all kinds of quote unquote rules about what you should do and shouldn't do with regards to the bed.
Yeah.
Most of these are read by people who are having trouble sleeping. I'm not a big fan of hard and fast rules because in the long run, although we want to make sure that the bed stays a place where relaxing things happen, we're happy things, we feel safe, we feel content, we fall asleep, we sleep well, we get up. If we start saying things like, I enjoy reading for 15 minutes, no, you can't do that because you can't be awake in bed at all, that sets up a problem for us, because every single one of us, me included, is going to be awake in bed in the future. So if there's a brief period of wakeful time, and again, this is a rule of thumb, it might not necessarily apply to every individual. There's a brief period of time and somebody enjoys reading, especially if they're not having sleeping difficulties, there's no reason, in my opinion, why somebody can't read in bed. If somebody is in bed for a total of 10 hours and they spend 5 hours of it reading and 5 hours of it sleeping, or if they spend all night sleeping, but then they work on their laptop during the day in bed, that's a problem, because it's too much time in bed doing things other than sleeping.
Yeah.
It's less the thing itself that a person is doing and more, what is the energy around it?
Yeah. Because your brain, I think your brain doesn't stop working because it needs to process what you're reading. Well, it maybe depends on what you read as well. If you're reading action material, it kind of gets you worked up, with
Yeah,
adrenaline and all of that. But maybe if you're reading something soft, I don't know how to put it, the better word,
something light.
something light, it lulls you, maybe.
Yeah, this I think the same thing
Yeah,
goes for the buffer zone before bedtime, for
yeah,
example. A lot of people say, well, I should cut out all television for 4 hours before I go to bed or 2 hours before I go to bed.
mm, mm,
Well, I question that
mm,
because what is that person going to do instead?
mm,
If they're going to sit there and read a calculus textbook to try to bore themselves to sleep,
mm,
that's not going to be helpful. It
no,
would be much better for that person to do something that they enjoy
mm,
and then go to sleep.
yeah. Or maybe watch something that's very boring. Then you fall asleep.
Or something light. Don't
Yeah.
watch a horror movie if you're
No.
sensitive to
Yeah.
graphic imagery and then expect to sleep well.
Yeah. Right. We touched a little bit about the next question that I want to ask. Sleep hygiene. What is it, and how can it help us?
Sleep hygiene
Mm,
is an alien word to a lot of people. It essentially sounds like
yeah.
cleaning up your sleep.
Yeah.
So it's about
The first time I
cleaning up
saw it,
sleep.
that's what came to my
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about hygiene, hand washing, and
Yeah.
keeping things clean.
Yeah.
Sleep hygiene are the things that you read about that fall along the lines of make sure that your room is dark, make sure your room is cool, make sure that you block out noise. These kinds of things are considered sleep hygiene, and they are about preventing external intrusion into somebody's sleep that might cause them to have difficulty with their sleep. And there's a list about a mile long if you look them up on the interwebs.
So,
The thing about sleep hygiene is that it can be helpful for people who already sleep well. I can tell you that my clients who come to me
mm,
after many years of insomnia have better sleep hygiene than I do.
mm-hmm.
Sleep hygiene, in and of itself, is not a cure for insomnia. Because insomnia, as we've talked about, is generated from the inside. It's the fear of not sleeping
Mm,
that fuels it. So, just to use an example, if you have a blind and you lower the blind because there's lights outside and the lights might wake you up, that's observing some basic sleep hygiene. It's not
yeah.
that darkness is required to sleep.
Mm,
It can make it easier to sleep. We
yeah.
know lots of people who can fall asleep in the park in the sun.
Yeah.
So it's not a requirement, but it can make external light less available to bother our sleep. If a person is then taking their blackout blinds and taping them to the window to prevent any light from coming in, it's not the light that's keeping that person awake. It's the fear of not sleeping because a little photon of light might escape out the side of the blind that is
Mm,
keeping that person awake.
mm,
So if that is why when you look at all of the research and all the literature, sleep hygiene in and of itself is not helpful and is not recommended as a standalone treatment for people who have insomnia.
yeah.
The trouble is that's what you read about online. And
But where do we
people
go
who have
to?
difficulty sleeping, they read it and they're like, if I do more sleep hygiene and I make
Yeah.
it, and I have a bigger routine and it's
Mm,
more specific, and maybe it's this tea that, and maybe it's that tea, or I
mm,
slept well, maybe it was because I did this other thing 4 hours before bed.
mm,
It can become really crazy making and make people feel
mm,
like they're broken when actually it was never going to be really helpful in the
yeah.
long run anyway.
Yeah. Right. I know you said sometimes it's not helpful, especially for those who are already suffering. But does the color of the wall, the bedroom wall, count? Or maybe
It
this of
depends
the
who you,
ceiling? Yeah.
it depends who you ask. I think if you think that it counts, it's going to count more than if you don't think that it counts. I think it's really important to have a space that you find restful,
Okay.
and that's going to look different to different people. I would find the color red, really bright red, which I love red, but
Mm,
I would find it too stimulating to have on my
yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
I like having a pale green
Mhm.
or a very neutral color, because it makes the rest of the room easier to manage as well. Much more calming and soothing. So that's a very individual thing. And I suppose if you spoke to some psychologists who are specialists in color,
Mm,
there are things that can be said about the meaning that we give color. That's why companies spend a lot of money working out what kind of color blue needs to go in their logo.
Yeah.
What kind of message does it send? So I'm sure that there is some impact, but when we're looking at sleep, which is a non-motivational type of thing, as opposed to which brand or which product we should buy, I think whatever helps a person feel more relaxed and comfortable is going to be more important than anything else.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you in some way that some colors are very stimulating. If your room is very busy with colors, rainbow colors all over, I don't know how you can relax and catch some sleep while you stimulate it like that. But anyway, like you say, it depends on people, and also who you're talking to. So now we have sleeping myths that are out there. You said, there's number of those. What are those? What are those myths?
Oh, there are so many good ones.
Yeah, good ones. Okay, I like good.
So the myth of the 8-hour myth.
Yeah,
is a really important one.
Okay.
People have gotten this message that if they don't get 8 hours of sleep, if they get less than that, if they get more than that, that they're going to have they're going to have health consequences. They're going to be bad. And there's a lot of worry and panic around that. And there's a bit of a misconstrual of the information being sent out when it comes to like memification of health risks is a really dangerous thing. So you take a fundamental basic piece of information and put it out there in a certain way, and it gets received in a certain way. When people say poor sleep or insufficient sleep has certain risks attached to it, there's nothing there that says insomnia. There are other sleep disorders that have very strong associated risks for certain kinds of health outcomes, but they get lumped in. Insomnia gets lumped in with all of those, along with people who don't get enough sleep because they work 3 jobs and they're very stressed out. So poor or inadequate sleep is not the same as insomnia, but the people who are reading this stuff are the people who have insomnia, and that just makes their fear of not sleeping enough worse. And if you're somebody who feels fine on 7 hours or even 6.5 hours, you can fall asleep within 20 minutes. You wake up once or twice in the night and you fall back to sleep, and you wake up and you can function in your day. Whatever that number for you is the right number for you. And if somebody needs only 6.5 or 7, and they have this idea that they need to get 8, and they start doing things like laying in bed, trying really hard to get an extra hour of sleep, they're actually going to create problems with the sleep that they already get, in part from staying in bed too long, in part from having anxiety about not getting enough sleep. It's going to make it more complicated. So the 8-hour myth, it can create a lot of anxiety and stress for people. Absolutely. Yeah. That's probably the biggest and most pervasive one. Another one is that people who don't sleep well should go out and buy an expensive gadget, watch, or app so that they can track their sleep. And I really advise people against doing that, because most people are interested in
you're killing the stages. Industry there.
Sorry?
You're killing the industry there.
Most people are interested in sleep staging, and watches and apps are simply they're not up to snuff. They're not accurate enough to use for sleep staging. That's why we have polysomnography as the gold standard for determining where somebody is in their sleep. And people start obsessively tracking their sleep. And I woke up at this time, and I woke up at this time, and I woke up at that time, and I was awake for 47 minutes at 2:00 in the morning. There's nothing that we can do with that information in the moment. All it does is it gives somebody a place to anchor their anxiety around not sleeping. And it can actually reinforce waking up in the middle of the night to be looking at your clock, your watch, or your app every time you wake up. Even if you wait till the next morning and you read the printout, for example, that just dates me saying it that way, doesn't it? You read the printout.
Yeah.
what is a person who doesn't understand how that information can be used going to do with that information? It's not going to be helpful. And it promotes over monitoring of sleep, which can worsen sleep over time as well.
Right.
Those are two really big ones that kind of look at things from very different angles. There are so many myths about sleep.
Yeah. Another one, I saw one of the shows that you did, or the interviews that you did. In fact, it's a snippet from your page, I think. You were talking about alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
How does alcohol affect your sleep? Some would say, if you want to sleep better, have a sip of something, alcoholic in the evening before you sleep, and then you just fall right into bed. What do you say about that?
So alcohol is a soporific and a sedative, and it can help us relax in the evening. One of the problems is people can become dependent on using it to fall asleep, because it is so effective at kind of fuzzing us out so that we're not too worried about things. It can make us feel a little bit lighter, a little bit less concerned about things, and it's a little bit of a sedative. So it can often help people fall to sleep. Unfortunately, it gets misused helping people fall to sleep a lot of the time. The problem with alcohol is that it appears to help people sleep because they pass out. They fall asleep more quickly.
Yeah.
But alcohol severely disrupts the deepest stages of our sleep. So we're talking about people following their watches and checking their stages of sleep. If people are concerned at all about the depth and quality of their sleep, alcohol is going to essentially delete that section of sleep. It really chops it up and makes it unrestorative. That is the number one risk direct to sleep amongst the other risks of using alcohol as a sleep aid. It's very common that people will do it, but it does has short-term effects on that night's sleep. Regular alcohol use can have longer-term effects on people's sleep as well. Now, does that mean you should never, if you are somebody who enjoys a glass of wine at dinner when you go out on a Friday night, does that mean you shouldn't do that in order to protect your sleep? Because that's always the second question when people who have difficulty sleeping are asking about it. Yeah. And again, I fall back on my feeling that I think I'm very mortality motivated. Like I said, we are here for a short time. We need to enjoy our life. And if an occasional glass of wine enables you to, it shows up for, enables is the wrong word. It shows up for you in a way that supports your activity. Fine. I think that life is too short to cut out everything that we love. But if somebody is using alcohol to help themselves sleep, I think there are a lot of questions to be asked around that. A, around the sleep, and B, around the risk of
being
misuse and dependence.
Yeah, because we always have to be careful on what we use. Some use sleeping pills, some would use herbal teas. Maybe you can comment on that if you have any idea on these herbal teas. Do they really work? And if they work, how do they stimulate sleeping that you don't have?
That's a really interesting question. I think that the medicinal effect of your over-the-counter herbal teas, like the one I've got here, are wildly overstated.
Yeah.
Is having a cup of tea in the evening because it relaxes you and makes you feel warm and cozy a bad thing? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
The question I think people should ask around their tea is, if you didn't have it, would you be afraid that you wouldn't sleep? And that is where doing things external to influence our sleep can be a slippery slope. The same thing goes for sleep hygiene. If you believe you need a mask in order to sleep, and you forget your mask when you go on holiday, it's not the mask being missing that is going to create sleep disruption. It's going to be the thought, oh my goodness, I'm not going to sleep because I don't have my mask. And the same thing goes with anything. I love a cup of tea, and there are lots of really nice ones. I would suggest avoiding caffeine before bedtime, certainly. I personally have a cutoff of around noon, but a nice tea, if you enjoy it and you would do it anyway, then there's absolutely no reason not to. For example, anything before bed. If you enjoy yoga and you would do it even if you slept well, then there's not a problem doing yoga before bed. If you are doing yoga before bed to try to force yourself to sleep, then there's a slippery slope there. Because when we're doing these things to try to make sleep happen, because we are afraid of not sleeping, we're reinforcing the idea that we're in danger if we don't sleep.
So it has to be natural.
A vicious circle too.
It has to be natural. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what is one thing everyone can do to help improve their sleep? We've dismissed all these myths, that sleeping 8 hours, drinking herbal tea, and yoga, and all of these. What can you suggest as a professional?
Things that could help anybody and would be safe for everybody would be things like not looking at the clock at night. That would be my number one tip to anybody who has any kind of concern around their sleep, because it only trains your brain to continue waking up at night to do that. Nobody looks at the clock at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, yay, I got 3 hours of sleep. Everybody says, I only got 3 hours of sleep and I only have 3 before my alarm goes off, right? Our perception of the time at night is never going to be positive. It doesn't help. Yeah. So that would be my number one suggestion. Number two suggestion's already been touched on, and that would be to start your day as close to the same time as possible every single day, even on weekends, if you have any sleeping difficulty, because just something simple as that early enough on can help you kind of right the ship before it starts to wobble too much. I think those are two really good ones. The other thing is, this sounds so strange being a practitioner who works online, but stop researching. Dr. Google is often not helpful. Find a voice or two of people who speak rationally. Beware of scammy types of interventions for sleep. There's no quick fix. So I think if you can encapsulate tip number 3 would be to abandon the idea that there is a quick fix if you've had insomnia. Again, it's different if you're having a short-term bout of sleeplessness, a few weeks because there's something going on. If you don't let yourself worry about the sleeplessness itself, things will right themselves. It's a biological function. But one of the worst things you can do is scroll on your phone at night looking for insomnia fixes.
Trying to avoid insomnia.
Yeah. You're allowed to come watch this show, though. That's what I'm
definitely.
saying.
You have to. You have to. By the way, it will be on YouTube after this recording. And we also stream into Telegram. And thank you to those who were able to connect this early of the day. And if you do have any questions, please raise your hand as usual. And you can ask your questions to our guest, Tracy Hannigan. Tracy is a sleep therapist, right? I got it right, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a sleep
therapist for adults who have insomnia.
Adults who have insomnia. So if you are suffering from insomnia, or you know anyone that's suffering from insomnia, she's the right person to do that. What she has said, if you just join us now to recap, she said, stop Googling, because Dr. Google is not very helpful. There are a lot of myths there that we catch from Google, our searches. But speaking of that, Tracy, I know you're speaking about Google, and this encapsulates a lot of search engines like YouTube, and also on YouTube you do have, I would say in quotes, doctors or professionals, that profess on how you can get your good sleep, and this is what you need to do. Now, how do you sift out the real ones from the bad ones, from the scams?
Great question. Yeah. I love that question. It goes to health literacy. You will probably not find a qualified sleep therapist if therapy is the angle you're looking for, pushing lots of gadgets and supplements and teas. You will not see them using a million exclamation points in the titles of their movies. They will not be using clickbait to get your attention. That is more along the lines of people who are hard selling a quick fix, is what I would say. That's how I would put it. And also, there are myself. There are a handful of other very reputable people who are online. Follow them and pay attention to what they say. If you're not sure who they are, look them up. See if they're reputable. See if they have a qualification other than being a CEO of a company that sells something. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of these things are necessarily bad things, right? But if we're looking to the outside to put a Band-Aid on a sleeping problem that's been around for a while, we need to really pay attention to that. Because if we can put a Band-Aid on it and think that this happens all the time, think, right, that worked for a few days, but then it stopped working. So then they went to the next Band-Aid and the next Band-Aid and the next trick and the next 2-minute sleep hack and the next this and the next that. All of these things, what they're really doing is they are making us think that we have a solution outside of us. So we stop worrying about whether we're going to sleep or not. And if we're not worrying about our sleep and our arousal comes down, voila, we're able to sleep. And it doesn't take long, though, before the brain starts looking for something else, because that's its job, where suddenly we question it, and then we have a sleep wobble, and then we decide that thing from the outside didn't work. So I would say look for somebody who is a qualified professional. Be wary of people who do a lot of the standard things that you would be worried about if you saw them in your email inbox. Lots of exclamation points, promises of cures, promises of quick fixes. And I would say be very deliberate in your choice and your path of action. I think there are a lot of things out there that can help people with their sleep. There are things that can really take you off on a tangent. Stay focused on the goal. And what I would say the goal is for somebody who has long-standing insomnia is to look inside, because that is where sleep resilience lives. Yes, even sleep therapy in the short term can look like a short-term fix. You can do certain things to ramp up sleep drive that can be really helpful. But the long-term resilience to be able to deal with life's ups and downs that are going to affect our sleep, that comes from the inside. You don't want to be dependent on something from the outside, because you might not have it available. It might become too expensive. Really, the solution for longer standing insomnia is on the inside, and it's about dealing with the anxiety and discomfort of not sleeping well.
Yeah. Could exercise help with combating insomnia?
Oh, exercise is great. It's great for lots of things. It's great for your brain function. It's great for growing different parts of your brain. It's great for your heart and the rest of your body. It's great for your sleep. Sleep drive is one of the things that helps us with falling asleep, staying asleep, and good quality sleep. And physical activity helps fuel sleep drive. What I would say is pick something that you like to do, and ideally something that you would do anyway. If you're doing it specifically for sleep, just be careful that you aren't going out and doing a workout saying, yeah, now I really should sleep because I did this great workout, because that's putting too much pressure on a situation that's already a little bit out of balance. But in general, physical activity is good for us in a whole lot of ways, including our sleep.
Okay. All right. I envy my wife. She exercises almost every week. And I so want to do that, but I'm finding the challenge. And my other issue, not an issue as such, but I find myself being able to be creative at night. I'm an editor, video editor. I do these podcasts. I'm a photographer. So I find that when it's nighttime, it's when that I get these creativities, or if I need to do some research, of the work that I'm doing, I find it easier to do them at night. And while you're doing it, lo and behold, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You have to sleep.
That's a really good point to raise, and it touches also on another sleep myth too. We all have a different clock.
Yeah,
our clock is biologically determined. I'm an early bird. Some people are night owls. My creative time is in the morning. I have more physical energy in the morning. Some people have more creative energy and more physical energy later in the day. They're better at certain tasks during the day. So that person might have a differently shaped curve and a different clock than me. The where it touches on a sleep myth is that you should be sleeping between 10 and 2 in order to get your best sleep. What about the person who has a delayed phase to their circadian rhythm, who simply could not sleep at 10 o'clock at night? Does that mean they have a problem? Probably not. Probably not.
Did we lose her?
You are actually sleeping. So for me, I'm asleep by 9 o'clock every night. Terrible at a party. My son, however, asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. He's a teenager. That's normal for him. It's the first block of sleep whenever we do sleep, whenever our clock tells us to sleep, where we have the most deep sleep. So it doesn't have to be between 10 and 2. That might suit some people. But even across the whole night, another sleep myth, people think that all sleep should be deep sleep. I've had people come to me very concerned that their watch said that they got 20% deep sleep, and they're very worried about this. That would be considered completely normal for a human adult. This is how tracking can create problems for people.
Yeah. And I think because we're growing older, each day as it goes. I mean, I'm 45 now, and I find that my pattern of sleeping has drastically changed from the time I was a teenager. And when I was a teenager and through my early years of my marriage, 18 years, baby, are we 18? Sorry if she's listening there. 18 or 19 years. Hopefully I don't get it out of from this side. So anyway, I found that I could sleep for the longest time. Like if I slept, let's say at 10, I can wake up the following day at 12, midday, just sleeping one way. I don't even wake up to go to the loo or anything else. But now, if I happen to wake up in the middle of the night and then I look at the time, I'm going to battle to fall back to sleep. So does age also have that effect? Or is just, case by case,
Yeah, there's always individual variation in there, but it's a theme. So when humans go through secondary sexual maturation, it affects a part of their brain that tends to delay their sleeping phase, and people tend to sleep more. So like a 19, 20-year-old, even up to 24, it might be very typical for them to be very much night owls and then kind of go back to normal or normal, not the right word, go back to a standard kind of chronotype that fits a 9-to-5 job. And then some people remain there. As we get older, our sleep does change. The proportion of time we spend in deep sleep decreases basically after 30, it begins to decrease. The amount of time that we spend in REM sleep, which is the phase of sleep where we are actively dreaming, also decreases. It changes. All humans will spend most of the night in lighter stages of sleep, but that proportion of those two kinds of sleep definitely changes. We also, as humans, tend to have a shift in our clock to becoming earlier and earlier and earlier. And so that could be partly biological and partly social as well. People who are much older tend to have maybe health conditions that prevent them from being physically active or being outdoors very much. Their circadian rhythm can become disrupted, their pattern can change, their social life changes. All of that can have an impact on sleep that makes it look like older adults have quite different sleep than younger adults do. But we know from research that actually has a biological element to it as well.
Here's another myth for you if you didn't know. I always knew growing up that when you're older, you don't sleep because you're afraid of dying. So the less sleep you have, the better, because all you want to see yourself is awake, then you know you're alive. Yeah.
That's very interesting, because you don't know one way or the other if you're actually asleep, do you?
Yeah, no, we don't know. Maybe you're dreaming. I don't know. So where can people find you? And I know you in the UK, and a majority of our audience here is in South Africa. But although we all over the world, as you put it, but how can they find you?
I have a website. It does what it says on the tin, tracythesleepcoach.co.uk.
Okay.
And you can find me on all of the main social media platforms as well. Instagram at Tracy the Sleep Coach, TikTok at Tracy the Sleep Coach, YouTube at Tracy the Sleep Coach. If you just put Tracy the Sleep Coach into any of the main engines, you will find me.
Okay, Tracy.
I also offer a free 20-minute chat to anybody who'd like to talk about possibly working together if they are interested in that.
Okay, all right. So it doesn't matter where they are. You do it online.
No, I work with people all over the world. Now, time zones can sometimes be an issue. It depends on people's schedules.
Yeah.
So the time zone for the lovely people who are likely to be listening to this show on their way home from work, we're definitely within the realm of possibility.
Okay.
The West Coast of North America is sometimes tricky. Has to be kind of early in the morning. But I have clients on the West Coast of North America all the way around to Singapore.
Whoa. Wow, you're global. And we're about to make it global in South Africa too, eh? It is South Africa to the right. Yeah, if they call you from South Africa, just say to them, where did you get me? NMP Talk Show. Yes. Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
I do ask the question. I will let you know.
Tracy, thank you so much, man. We really enjoyed this conversation. Time flies when we're having fun and talking about these important issues. Yeah, it does. So just to recap, what advice can you give our audience in terms of combating insomnia?
Right. The word combating is really interesting, and I've been reflecting on this. Dropping the struggle and the fear of not sleeping is number one. Easier said than done. But practically speaking, what can people do? They can build their sleep confidence by doing things that help build sleep drive, like exercise and like waking up at the same time every day.
Yeah.
Not watching the clock, and not monitoring using apps and those sorts of devices. It sounds like very simple advice, but it actually can be quite powerful in aid of dropping the fear of not sleeping.
All right. Thank you. That was a good round off the topic that we just had. So if you're watching live, thank you for joining us. And we acknowledge those that also connected on Telegram. We really appreciate your support every Monday. Today it was earlier at 5, but then usually we have our show at 6:30 because of time difference that we have with our guest. But catch us again next week, Monday, at the same time, 6:30, when we'll be chatting more about issues that has to do with mental health wellness. And insomnia is one of those, it affects your mental wellness. If you don't get enough sleep, you don't sleep, there's a good chance that you're mentally not fit at the end of the day. So we want to get everyone sleeping. But promise me, before you sleep, make sure that you like our show. Go to our YouTube page, NMP Talk Show, subscribe, like, and share what you just watched. Also, comment on it so that everyone can see that you really enjoyed it. And, if you have any input or a question to our guest, that we'll be able to pass it through. We know that they will also be subscribing very soon. And then they can be able to answer those questions that you be asking. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. My name is Neo Morapedi, the host of NMP Talk Show, and this is how we signing out.
Thanks a lot.